Hello everyone. Pelosi pressed Pentagon on safeguards to prevent Trump from ordering military action. But short of the cabinet invoking the 25th Amendment or impeaching and convicting the president, it would be unconstitutional to defy legal orders from the commander-in-chief, experts note. And today we're going to be talking about Pelosi and her attempt to overthrow with her own coup against the President of the United States. Speaker Nancy Pelosi of California on Friday took the unprecedented step of asking the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff about, quote, available precautions to prevent President Trump from initiating military action abroad or using his sole authority to launch nuclear weapons in the last days of his term. So you're asking to overthrow his rule. Who's in charge of the nuclear armament, the nuclear codes, etc., if he's not? You say, well, it's the Pentagon, this, that, the other, but really, whose? Do you want the nuke codes, Miss Nancy Pelosi, seeing how they just took your laptop? You are not one to talk about security. And we're going to put our asterisks on this. Joe Biden is the same man that criticized Trump for being a security risk, and in the middle of that same speech, pointed out to the world his nuke case man. Does that nuke case guy have a job after that, now that Joe Biden has literally pointed the man out to every agent in the world? We'd like to think that man probably lost his job if anything was any kind of secure with the Democrats. But we read on to the article. In a phone call to the chairman, General Mark A. Milley, Ms. Pelosi appeared to be seeking to have the Pentagon leadership essentially remove Mr. Trump from his authorities as commander-in-chief. That could be accomplished by ignoring the president's order or slowing them by questioning whether they were issued legally. But General Milley appears to have made no commitments, short of the cabinet invoking the 25th Amendment or removing Mr. Trump through impeachment in the House and conviction in the Senate. It is unconstitutional to defy legal orders from the commander-in-chief. Amen. And many of these Democrats should have known that starting out. Honestly, we look at most of these Democrats as very treasonous because you never gave the man a chance and you've been attacking him this whole entire time. And what would you call that? You were bullying him on TV. You were bullying him in political circles. You were bullying the President of the United States. And it doesn't matter if you don't like him or do like him. You are supposed to follow his orders because you are the politician of that country. And he is, whether you like it or not, your leader. Mrs. Pelosi's request, which she announced for the Democratic caucus as an effort to prevent a, quote, unhinged president from using the nuclear codes, was wrapped in politics of seeking a second impeachment of Mr. Trump. And we'd like to note, everybody out there, it is just a political game. If they have a Republican on the ropes and they can talk more ill of them or do more damage to their other party, they're going to do it. And Ms. Pelosi is no different than any other politician. Colonel Dave Butler, a spokesman for General Milley, confirmed that the phone call with the speaker had taken place but described it as informational. Quote, he answered her questions regarding the process of nuclear command authority, he said. But some Defense Department officials clearly resented being asked to act outside of the legal authority of the 25th Amendment and saw it as more evidence of a broken political system. They said that some political leaders were trying to get the Pentagon to do the work of Congress and cabinet secretaries who have legal options to remove a president. So what we have here is a Congress that went out of line and went to the Pentagon and went right up under Trump to usurp his power. And that is what this is. You're telling the Pentagon, the people who respond to the president in a crisis emergency situation, that he cannot pull the trigger. Whether he knows he can pull the trigger or not is inconsequential, but the United States as a country is so unprotected when the leader can't pull the trigger. So all of these other countries out there, they really do have the ability to drop something on the United States right now. And because of the political nature of the United States, the president won't be allowed to pull the trigger. Anyway, we'll read on. Mr. Trump, they noted, is still the commander-in-chief unless he is removed. The military is bound to follow his lawful orders. While military officials can refuse to carry out orders they view as illegal or slow the process by sending those orders for careful legal review. They cannot remove the president from the chain of command. That would amount to a military coup, the official said. So what they're saying is Nancy Pelosi officially tried to stage a military coup of the President of the United States. We read on. But two former administration officials with close ties to the national security establishment said that they had seen signs that Mr. Trump's aides were, in words of one, quote, routing around the president by not raising issues that could prompt him to move towards military action. So we wonder, with these people that attacked our soldiers that were claiming to be Russian, and that was a big deal for a few weeks, we wonder if these people just did not inform him, that some actions that were taking around him were not allowing him to be the leader he could be. People around him weren't informing him. The one issue that has worried officials the most is Iran's announcement that it has begun enriching uranium to 20% purity, near the quality to make a bomb. In December, Mr. Trump asked for the military options that might be taken in response to Iran's escalating production of nuclear fuel, but he was talked out of it by a number of top officials, including General Milley and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. And again, sometimes these things take over in politics, and the people that are trying to protect the president aren't actually doing the right thing. They're usurping what the president needs. In a note to her Democratic majority, Mrs. Pelosi said that she had asked General Milley about, quote, available precautions for preventing an unstable president from initiating military hostilities or accessing the launch codes and ordering a nuclear strike. The situation of this unhinged president could not be more dangerous, and we must do everything that we can to protect the American people from this unbalanced assault in our country and our democracy. All right, we're going to stop right there. I have to question Nancy Pelosi and her worrying about the American people. The American people just staged up in her office and took her stuff. I really don't think the people are too satisfied with Nancy Pelosi's caretaking. We don't care if she faked another election. We just know that this woman, she is always after Trump. It's always been like that from day one. She is a party of one. She doesn't care about the Democrat Party. She doesn't care about the Republican Party. She does not give a crap about the American majority, and we're not going to get anywhere with a person who is always attacking a president. That is actually the coup right there. She undermined the will of the American people as well as the President of the United States. If these things cannot be considered traitorous acts, then we're not really sure what is. The American people and the president deserve respect. They deserve the right to be told the truth, and they deserve the right to think for themselves. Unless they went to court and told him he was not allowed to be the president anymore, these people have no leg to stand on to go behind his back and usurp his power. That is treason. But we read on. Other Democrats look up the theme. Quote, the president should be removed. Senator Patrick J. Laney of Vermont said, quote, I hate to think of him being down there having access to nuclear weapons and all that, because it was always an option for him to do, right? Since he was actually telling all these people in the Capitol to go home and don't hurt the police officers. It sounds like a person that's completely unhinged, right? This was not the first time the issue has come up in the American history or in regard to Mr. Trump. In the last days of Richard M. Nixon's presidency, the Defense Secretary James R. Schlesinger quietly issued a set of orders that Mr. Nixon sought to move or use nuclear weapons. Commanders should route the request to him or Secretary of State Henry A. Kissinger. Schlesinger described his actions only after Mr. Nixon left office and said he was concerned that the president was drinking or that he might lash out. Michael B. Schloss, the presidential historian, said Mr. Schlesinger had told him a number of years ago that he was, quote, worried about Mr. Nixon's physical and emotional state and wanted to make sure there was no danger the nuclear arsenal could be abused. Mr. Kissinger, 97, said several years ago that he had not been aware of any such orders. So they're making up stuff and changing history to fit the narrative right now. In 2016 presidential campaign, Hillary Clinton also raised the issue of Mr. Trump's suitability to command the nuclear arsenal. Imagine him in the Oval Office facing a real crisis, she said in her address to the Democratic National Convention. A man you can bait with a tweet is not a man you can trust with nuclear weapons. But we're going to stop right there and argue the question here. Why did we see Biden out the nuke case guy on national television? He literally pointed at the man. Tell me that's security. Did Hillary Clinton jump all over him for doing that disastrous thing? You went on national television and pointed at the nuke case guy, Joe Biden. That's not the most exact, secure thing you could have done. And no one criticized him for the act. We find it kind of ironious that people can blame Trump for this very thing that he didn't do, but Biden does the unsecure thing and no one even notices. During his presidency, Mr. Trump hinted at using nuclear weapons only once, when he was the first standoff with Kim Jong-il of North Korea in 2017. He threatened, quote, fire and fury like the world has never seen, but they didn't actually mention napalm or the atomic bomb or any other kind of bomb. He just said fire and fury. I mean, that could be anything. And later told aides that he thought the threat forced Mr. Kim into diplomacy, which is actually a tactic that you can use. You can tell them that if you don't want to cooperate, that we can beat on you. And that's exactly what the Democrats have been doing with a lot of people, and no one seems to care. But it's wrong when we're using it for peaceful relations and democracy. Though the series of the 3 summit meetings with North Korean leader led to none of the disarmament that he had predicted it would. And actually, it seems like we had more peace than we would have had otherwise had anybody not done anything or talked to the man. So we say here that Trump did a good job actually taking care of us and taking care of them in that regard. We're still here. Now, at the end of Mr. Trump's presidency, Mr. Pelosi is again raising the specter of an unstable leader as part of her effort to pressure Republicans to join in a second impeachment resolution. And here's the catch, folks. There's no time for a trial in the Senate. They can't even draw up paperwork fast enough to get him impeached. Let everyone understand the premise here. She does not have the time to impeach this man. The impeachment they already ran before took several months, and now they're going to do it in 2 weeks? We don't think so, Nancy Pelosi, and this is all for political buff. You're only fluffing your chest and trying to put down more Republicans, more conservatives, and the president himself. Peter D. Fever, a professor of political science at Duke University who has studied the armed forces, said that the military could, in theory, physically restrict Mr. Trump's access to the nuclear codes because it provides the command, control, and communications that link the president to the nuclear arsenal. A military aide with this so-called nuclear football containing the launch codes is just feet away from the president at all times. And we know this because we had Joe Biden point that man out. But legally, the military cannot deny the president access to the codes unless the 25th Amendment has been activated. As long as President Trump is commander-in-chief, then one of the highest priority missions the military has is maintaining connectivity between him and the nuclear arsenal, and I expect that is what they're doing, and will continue to do until Inauguration Day, Mr. Fever said. Quote, this is a good example of people asking the military to solve a problem that is not the military's to solve, he added. If Congress believes that President Trump should not have access to the nuclear codes, then Congress has the ability to make that happen through impeachment. So again, they have no power there. They're not allowed to usurp the President of the United States based on the orders of a Congresswoman's dirty theories. And if they were, we would wonder how protected we are. The President is the President for a reason, and he's the one that has the nuclear football for a reason. Is to protect the rest of us in case something happens in a minute or less, because that's about the time you have. Mr. Fever and other military specialists said on Friday that Mr. Trump could not carry out orders to fire nuclear weapons on his own because of a series of checks that are in place. For instance, the Pentagon can insist that orders come through the legal process in writing before they execute them. Quote, under the hypothetical that Speaker Nancy Pelosi appears to be imagining, insisting that the order come through regular channels and not the president calling on his iPhone would feel like resisting an order, but it would actually be insisting that it be legal, Mr. Fever said. So they're saying right here that unless it's the president calling in, he can't do anything about it, and that is the rules. Unfortunately for Nancy Pelosi, he's not allowed to usurp anything the president already has going on within the Constitution or preordained rules. Doing so would actually be an act of terrorism as well as treason. He said the Pentagon could ask for legal review from its own lawyers, the Attorney General, and others. Quote, all of that would functionally accomplish what he's asking for and would be legal, Mr. Fever said. So no matter what Nancy Pelosi wants, it's not going to happen. You don't have the authority as any Congress person or Senate person to come in and decide that Trump does not have the power of nuclear football codes. But more concerning is that she would do this under the president's guise. She would protect herself and sneak to get her power through the army to negate his ability to even defend his country. If that's not a coup, we don't know what is. It doesn't make sense that someone like her would want to restrict his ability to use the nuclear football codes because at that moment in time, there would be so much conjecture and so much who would be allowed to push the button on who, that we would not be able to assure mutually assured destruction, or MAD as they call it. So if one country decides to launch a nuke at us currently, is everybody in the White House going to go around saying, well, who has the right to pull the trigger? It makes us very weak in all political lights, what Nancy Pelosi has done, and it is paramount to treason. Anyway, you folks have a wonderful afternoon, a good morning, a good night, whichever. Please like, share, and subscribe. We really do appreciate that around here. Also, drop a comment down below. We like to talk with you. We like to pick your brain. And if you have any ideas for new videos, we'd like you to drop that down below as well. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell. If you don't hit the notification bell, you might have a problem seeing our videos. God bless each and every one of you. See ya.